Hello, my fellow matriarchs. Welcome to our next matriarchal sermon. It is about building the matriarchy, a how-to, if you will. It's one thing to discuss it, which is very important, and it's another thing to take action. So today's reading will be what I would like to call the first lesson in building the matriarchy, which is rebellion from the patriarchy. So I'm going to read from one of my favorite books called Belonging by Tokopa Turner. And the reading comes in the first third of the book, about belonging, building belonging. It's in the chapter called Initiations by Exile, and the reading is called Necessary Rebellion. And I think I'll read it first, and then we'll talk about it. All right, so here we go. Lesson 1 in building the matriarchy. Necessary rebellion. Though we think of rebellion as a warrior-like, it is really about making the self vulnerable in a heavily armored world. The act of rebellion is to expose and to be exposed in those places that have been kept hidden for too long. Because the rebel chooses to speak up with her voice or her action against tradition, she risks her life and the security of false belonging for the chance at being truly alive. In doing so, she incites aliveness in others. There is a pivotal juncture in every heroine's journey when she stands alone. She is led by the depths of her convictions to take a stand, to name the unaddressed, to call out of hiding the secret malaise in her community. She arrives at a standpoint not without doubts, but in spite of them. And sometimes there is a hefty price to pay, like being the target of criticism or worse, rejection from the group which is at odds with her truth. The willingness to rebel from the expected norms, roles, and silent contracts of establishment comes out of knowing that one cannot afford to build resentment. Resentment, which comes from the decision to go against one's truth, embitters the self. It somatizes in the body and takes on the burden of pain as if it were ours alone. The whistleblower, on the other hand, reveals a shared complicity. It says, I expect more from myself and from you. And in that stance, the pain becomes, in a sense, communal. The dissenting voice speaks for the voiceless. And in some ironic plot twist, it is in the revolt against outdated belonging that real solidarity can be born. Your willingness to speak the truth about something that disagrees with you is what allows for the undamming of communication, giving all involved a fertile place to grow in the chance to build a real village. While every mythic journey requires us to make painful separations from the group, it is so that we can learn to hear and follow our originality. We discover that the very things that make us different are attempting to distinguish our lives. These aspects of yourself that you have discarded, set aside, ignored, and discouraged are the very things to which you must cling. The collective depends on the aggrandizing of your rejected qualities. The sooner you begin adopting your own difference, the sooner love can rush in to support you in raising your voice above the monotonous hum of the mainstream. We think of rebellion as something we put to external service in the world. We become activists in protest of some wrongdoing, some injustice we must speak against. But I think there is a rebellion before the rebellion, a more intimate form of protest speaking from and for the devalued feminine. The feminine has nothing to gain. She doesn't vie for leverage. She doesn't want to prove anything or achieve dominion. She wants something infinitely more rebellious. She strips falsity and stirs up feeling in the anesthetized heart. She awakens a kind of long memory throughout and beyond ages. She gives a shape to the swelling and collapsing heart. She is all, but it is so, sorry, that is all, but it is so much. Because when we sing with her voice, anyone who hears it remembers what they too have forgotten, that we are noble and beholden to each other. Rebellion is the pushback on that long-standing amnesia. Like nausea rejects a poisonous substance, rebellion wants us to see what is beneath falsity, what is really enduring when all else is stripped away. What longing, if we undam it, might pound through our lives, bringing life to the dryness of our over-harvested creek bed within. What if there is a story coming through us, which is trying to find its way into the world? If we can withstand the trials of exile, can we have the chance of turning that story into something that shows others that they are not alone? Rebellion can make us feel ostracized from the group, turning us into the black sheep of our family or community. But the black sheep are the artists, visionaries, and healers of our culture, because they are the ones willing to call into question those places which feel stale, obsolete, or without integrity. The black sheep stirs up the good kind of trouble. Her very life is confrontation with all that has been assumed a tradition. Her being different serves to bring the family or group to consciousness where it has been living too long in the dark. As the idiom implies, she is the wayward one in the flock. Her life's destiny is to stand apart, but paradoxically, it's only when she honors that apartness that she finally fits in. The world needs your rebellion and the true song of your exile. In what has been banned from your life, you find a medicine to heal all that has been kept from the world. We must find the place within where things have been muted and give that a voice. Until those things are spoken, no truth can find its way forward. The world needs your unbelonging. It needs your disagreements, your exclusion, your ache to tear the false constructions down to find the world beyond this one, or behind this one. And then she has, and there's my dog growling. She's found something to bark at. So Tokopa Turner then talks about the black sheep gospel, and she has, there we are, 13 points of the black sheep gospel. So I'll read those out for you. Number 1, give up your vows of silence which only serve to protect the old and the stale. Number 2, unwind your vigilance, soften your belly, open your jaw, and speak the truth you long to hear. Number 3, be the champion of your right to be here. Number 4, know that it is you who must first accept your rejected qualities, adopting them with a totality of your love and commitment. Aspire to let them never feel outside of love again. Number 5, venerate your too muchness with an ever-renewing vow to become increasingly weird and eccentric. Number 6, send out your signals of originality with frequency and constancy, honoring whatever small trickle of response you may get until you reach a momentum. Oh, that one's a big one for me. Number 7, notice your helpers and not your unbelievers. Number 8, remember that your offering needs no explanation. It is its own explanation. Number 9, go it alone until you're alone with others. Support each other without hesitation. Number 10, Become a crack in the network that undermines the great towers of establishment. Number 11, make your life a wayfinding proof that we can live outside the usual grooves. Number 12, brag about your escape. 13, send your missives into the network to be reproduced. Let your symbols be adopted and adapted and transmitted broadly into the new cultures we're building together. Belonging by Tokopa Turner. Isn't that when I first read that, it was like, it really was like a sermon, wasn't it? It's like you can see the preacher in the front with the podium and the whole sort of, just that energy of aliveness, except instead of condemnation and judgment that you would get in a religious patriarchal church, it's a calling to go within, to go deep inside your loins and your belly and pull out that suppressed vitality that is telling us, hey, this is how you live, and this is how you feel at home with yourself and in the world, and this is how you bring a community, like real community, together, and then using your voice to bring it to the world, using your fingers to write out a story, in pulling out an instrument to create a song, joining the protests in the street to, march for whatever cause speaks to you. Playing the game a little bit to get in there and change the laws. Whatever it is that calls to you. The first act of building a matriarchy is to rebel against the patriarchy. And I think it's really important to note that we're not talking about revenge, although if you have been a woman who's been harmed, there are moments that it seems really quite sweet to do so. But we're not talking about an active act of trying to harm others, but more of just putting that energy away from that fight and into building and reestablishing the truth and the sense of what needs to be righted. And if that truth then brings destruction and revenge to whatever needs to be destroyed, let karma do her job. But we are for the pillars of, as she said, bringing voice to the voiceless, of pulling up all that gunk that we were forced to swallow instead of speak, and finally speaking it. That is how we rebel. And we can do that in big ways. We can do that in little ways. I remember when I first started rebelling, and I was in my healing journey from abuse. Truth was a big one for me. It was my foundation. When you have spent your life being gaslighted from every direction imaginable, truth is what clears out the noise and brings you back that sense of peace and grounding. So my act of rebellion was truth before all else. And truth is, I could probably do a sermon just on truth itself, but I'll go a little bit into it here. Truth is There's truth, like 1 + 1 = 2. 1 + 2 does not equal 2. There's that kind of truth. There's also your truth, the one that is pulled from the deepest guts, that become your values, that you have to live from. Otherwise, you feel like you're being swallowed into the system of falsity. And then there's the ever-changing truth. What is true now and what may change to become true in the future. So it's not like we're talking, all black and white, but there is some black and white to it. So it's about playing around with it. And for me, the truth was my anchor to my sanity and my sense of happiness and peace and reclamation of my power and passion. So my first acts of a rebellion were just, where do I find the truth? And it could be something as simple as, do I want to lie down this way? Do I want to fall asleep on the couch? Or do I want to fall asleep on the bed? Do I want the TV on? Even though they say I shouldn't have the TV on to fall asleep, do I want it on? It was about coming to connection with my own wants, my own suppressed desires of what made me feel comfortable and at home with myself. And then from the little moments to moments, it built into day stuff. What is the truth of my day? What will make me feel like when I go to bed that night that I have lived a day of authenticity and integrity? What actions do I need to do? Maybe I don't even need to do anything. Maybe I just need to sit on the porch all day. And it can vary from day to day. And then from there, started to build the bigger things, like what are the values in my life? What are the places in this world that I feel a great injustice and truth needs to come back? Where do I fit in the world? I still struggle with that one. What is my calling? And I don't mean in a big sense of like, oh, this is my calling. It's going to become my new obsession, and it's going to become this grand, divine interjection into my life, or whatever, interference. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. It doesn't have to be anything like that, but like, what do I want to give voice to today? And then over the course of the days, what kind of narrative, what kind of pattern is building from that? And what kind of story do I want to make? That's how I ended up writing my book, which I'm trying to get published. I might self-publish it. That's another topic for another day. But that's how we start to rebel. And then, so I started to do that with things that just involved me, because I didn't have the strength enough. I didn't have that grit enough to do that with other people, because I avoided conflict and confrontation like the plague. I was a severe people pleaser because of my fear of abandonment. So the last thing I wanted to do was make somebody mad at me. So I avoided stuff like that. But then I would do little things, like in conversations with people first that didn't matter so much to me, strangers, people on the internet where it's like, well, if I say something and you get upset with me, it doesn't matter, and I don't care about you. I don't even know you. So I would start with little things like that, and it wasn't so much of creating a fight. It was more of, well, this is how I see it, or no, actually, this is what the reality is. Or something as simple as, I can sense that you're creating real discomfort in this group. So I'm going to walk away, or I'm going to find a way to put a stop to it, or I'm going to say something to change the course of direction, or, something like that. And then it would build into bigger things. And I would start to gain the confidence to do it with people in my life that I feared, being confrontational with. And then I slowly did that. And then it got bigger and bigger. And eventually I got to the point where, I can actually stand in front of my abusers now and tell them to fuck off. Not, I don't quite use those words, but I stand there and I'm like, yeah, this is just not going to stand, period. And I'll let them take on that projection of energy that they tried to shift onto me, and I'll just stand there and wait for them to take it back. And then I'll walk away. Or I'll say something like in my last video, Batter Up, 2024 Batter Up, there was a guy who verbally attacked me in a group, and I took his entire message and I showed the world exactly what he said, holding him accountable. And he really didn't like that. He got really angry, and I didn't care. So the more you find your fire, the bigger it builds, and the more rebellion you can do. So it doesn't have to be, 0 to 100, overnight. Start with the very, very tiny things that you can do. And even before that, as she says, before we do the external work, going internally and finding those areas of vulnerability and those areas of suppressed belonging and truth that want you to hear them. So your inner child, doing the work of therapy, journaling, whatever, that is still an act of rebellion, because you are now making a decisive point, a choice to stop being numb and to stop being pulled by the patriarchal system and just following the traps that they keep setting up for you, following the path. Instead, you're turning around and you're going to sit with a pain that they don't want you to sit with. Because if you sit with that voiceless inside of you, you're eventually going to find your voice. They don't want you to have a voice, because then it can turn around and face them. So it starts with just turning inwards and facing your inner child sometimes, or just that inner, that gnawing sensation, that, that constant rumbling in the back of your head, that thought that just persists no matter what, or that nagging emotion that just creeps at you when you're trying to fall asleep at night, or an inner, maybe it's a physical sensation. Like sometimes our body pains, our own body pains, are our body rebelling against the pressures it's being pulled upon. And the pain is the its expression. It's its voice that wants to yell and be free and find its own sense of belonging and matriarchy and wholeness and everything we're trying to establish here. So there are so many different avenues But I really like that chapter, that little reading in the book. I was trying to decide what to do for my next sermon, and something told me to pick up that book and peruse through it. And I came across this, and I'm like, yeah, I've been wanting to do a sermon on how to build the matriarchy. How do we get this going? How do we build that momentum? And lo and behold, she talks about building the momentum, so that's one of the gifts of the matriarchy. Following the intuition, following that little voice, and it leads you to all the gifts that you have been longing to receive. It really does. And then you get to open those gifts. So, fellow matriarchs, it is the end of January. It is 2024. If you feel this calling to build a matriarchy, to build a sisterhood, to restore some truth to the falsity of our world, to bring some justice to the unjust, this is one of your callings. This video is one of those little voices telling you, if you're watching this, something inside you is saying, yeah, Pull out a pen and paper, start brainstorming, and then start sharing, start speaking, start acting. So I'm Laura Rose. I am the creator of this channel and of the website, my website called Returning to Her, Healing from Harm. So you can visit my website at healingfromharm.com. I will be writing a blog article on the purpose of catastrophizing. So pay attention to that. That is coming up soon. I'm trying to build this channel, so please share, like, subscribe. And if you want, you can go to my PayPal button and donate if you want to help support me as I build my little corner of the matriarchy. And please comment, because I want to build it with you. So let's chat in the comments, and let me know what you think of this sermon. And if you do read the book, let me know what you think of the book. That's it for today. Have a good night.